Trump could not give a about anyone else's life. It's all about what satisfies his narcissistic thirst. You absolutely know he has no idea what he's doing and that his guiding light is his own ego and not the best interest of the United States of America.
If he doesn't, I'll let you know. I'll come back and I'll hit him hard, okay? No?
George Conway just unleashed a verbal nuke so brutal it even made Melania do a double take. That's right, Trump's least favorite lawyer just torched the entire MAGA mansion like a Christmas tree set ablaze. But here's the kicker. It wasn't just politics. Oh no, George went straight for the jugular. We're talking roast levels so savage, they'd make a Comedy Central special look tame. So buckle up, because this isn't just political drama, it's full-blown reality TV, starring a president and one very fed-up lawyer.
I think everybody overthinks this guy. There's no strategy. There is no thought. And the brand is just him. He lives in this world where there's just him. Okay?
But it's not just him, George. It's a hell of a lot of people out there who've gotten sucked up into this thing and that are perpetuating
I agree with
that brand.
I'm talking about in his mind.
Okay.
None of us matter. Those people don't matter. They're not real people. He doesn't care what happens.
Once upon a time, in the wild and overstuffed circus of American politics, there was a man bold enough to do the unthinkable. He took on Donald Trump armed with nothing but his legal smarts, razor-sharp sarcasm, and the ultimate inside weapon, his marriage to Kellyanne Conway. George Conway didn't just set the MAGA house on fire, he stormed in with a Harvard law degree, a briefcase bursting with receipts, and the weary expression of a man who's scrolled through way too many unhinged tweets before finishing his morning coffee.
He can't help himself but emotionally react to things. One of the things that he's a narcissistic sociopath. That's the thing everyone has to kind of get used to. It's the reason why you cannot normalize him. You cannot treat him like a normal human being because he's not. He is unwell. And that's why he can't follow. He's not going to be able to follow his lawyer's directions. That's why, he played right into the plaintiff's hands in the E. Jean Carroll case. They're trying to show basically he's a jerk.
If you're enjoying this video, don't forget to hit subscribe and smash that bell icon. Because what you're watching wasn't just some petty Twitter spat. Oh no, this was a cold, calculated demolition of Trumpism, brick by brick, line by line. And let's set the record straight. This wasn't some blue-haired activist from Portland yelling at the sky. This was a suit-wearing, Federalist Society card-carrying conservative who probably not only owned a copy of the Constitution, but actually read it. George Conway's transformation was as jaw-dropping as a Real Housewives season finale.
I want to diagnose him, but I think if you look at the diagnostic criteria for narcissistic personality disorder and antisocial personality disorder, he fits every single one of them. It's like the criteria were made to describe him. And I think what we saw with this tweet yesterday is that last final collapse of Donald Trump's mental state. I mean, you think about it, those were like 50, 60, 70,000 people in the aggregate in five rallies in different states. That's loopier than saying that the moon landings were staged, because there were tens of thousands of people were there. To think that is crazy, and to try to sell it to people.
One moment, he's the polished lawyer married to Trump's most loyal hype woman, Kellyanne. The next, he's on national TV diagnosing Trump like he's making morning rounds at Walter Reed. Honestly, if Trump were a legal case, George would have filed it, argued it, and handed down the sentence all before finishing breakfast.
He gets off on that, and then he gets bored with what he said yesterday. And of course, he doesn't necessarily remember what he says or care what he says yesterday. So tomorrow's going to be something else. And so if you take the number of days between now and January 20th, 2029.
So long from now.
One of these days, there's going to be a red button that's going to get pressed randomly.
Okay.
Okay. So that's the problem with him, is that you don't know what you're going to get random things from one day to the next.
It's a problem with him.
And one of, yes. Well, And one of those things is going to be bad.
And here's the best part. George doesn't shout. He doesn't lose his cool. He dismantles with precision. It's surgical, like watching someone carve a Thanksgiving turkey with a scalpel while casually lecturing on the Constitution's finer points. For George, this isn't just personal, it's poetic, even ironic. Like the Titanic going down because one of its own passengers couldn't stand the captain's hair. And into this flaming casserole of chaos walks Melania Trump, the most reluctant first lady in American history. A woman whose face has launched 1,000 memes, but apparently not a single genuine emotion. Melania has floated through scandal after scandal like a Roomba on low battery, quiet, slow, and mostly avoiding walls. But George saw right through the act. He wasn't fooled by her icy, I don't care minimalist aesthetic. He tore it apart like a prosecutor grilling a dazed witness in Dior. While the internet debated whether Melania's double blink was a cry for help or just a system glitch, George was busy dragging both her and Donnie through the legal and moral mud. And the internet rejoiced because, let's be honest, watching someone inside the house call the fire department is pure gold, especially when the arsonist is still upstairs tweeting from the second floor.
Books talking about, Joe Biden not being alert 12 hours a day. It's like, okay, but he's not a sociopath and he's not going to blow anything up randomly. And he's, we can talk about almost everything else except the fact that this guy is a deranged moron. And
right.
So, the problem is that we have completely normalized this to the point where we can't deal with it. We can't deal with the fact that the rest of the world can't, they can do that. Their leader.
George started landing punches so steadily, you had to wonder, did Trump regret hiring Kellyanne, or did Kellyanne regret dragging George into politics? Because every time Trump raged in all caps, you could bet George was somewhere sipping his coffee, calmly loading another thread. And George didn't waste time on cheap shots. He didn't mock Trump's diet or Melania's Instagram vibes. He went straight for the foundation. He called out the cracks in their version of reality, questioned the motives, the legitimacy, the absurdity of it all. Like someone quietly reminding the town that not only is the emperor naked, he's waving around a fake diploma. The irony? George was no outsider. He was married to Trump's own high priestess, Kellyanne Conway. This wasn't some liberal shouting into the void. This was her husband, flat out saying Trump was unfit, unstable, and obsessed only with applause. And the best part? George had the precision of a lawyer and the timing of a comedian. Every time Trump made some desperate legal stunt, delaying court dates, playing the victim, or screaming witch hunt like it was merch, George broke it all down, like a patient dad explaining taxes to a goldfish.
Donald Trump seeks revenge against not only just individuals like Mark Elias, Andrew Weissman, and all the people he's named in these executive orders. He seeks vengeance against the entire judicial system, the entire legal system, because it tried to hold him to account. And he seeks, because he does not want to be held accountable to the judicial system, he seeks essentially to undermine and destroy it. And the way he has been doing that is, first of all, by violating as many laws and constitutional provisions as he can possibly violate.
He'd casually drop lines suggesting Trump was dodging accountability like it was his daily cardio. He'd point out that Melania's polished silence wasn't grace, but autopilot PR. And when Team Trump acted shocked about indictments or investigations, George would calmly remind everyone that consequences aren't left-wing hoaxes, they're just the grown-up part of politics. Did Trump clap back? Of course, loudly, constantly, and incoherently. Imagine a raccoon with a megaphone arguing with a court stenographer. It never landed. Trump fired off 5-paragraph tantrums while George countered with 3 deadpan lines that hit like Supreme Court rulings. Melania? She did what she does best. Vanished into luxury, popping up occasionally like a hologram to wave, smile, or prove she still existed. George, meanwhile, stayed in the spotlight, armed with facts, sarcasm, and the look of a man who knew he was ruining brunches at Mar-a-Lago. Even Kellyanne seemed torn, praising Trump in public while privately attending events where her husband compared the president to a broken vending machine. That's when it became clear their marriage itself was the perfect political metaphor. Loyalty on one side, logic on the other, with a whole lot of awkward silence in between.
Donald Trump won in 2016. Your name was floated as someone who might work in his administration. You turned that down, and
I was offered the job of head of the Civil Division of the Department of Justice. And I filled out all the forms. They ran my background check, and I was interviewing people who were going to work underneath me. I was sort of far along there. And then I just started having this queasy feeling like I don't really want to work in this administration because what I saw was a shit show in a dumpster.
And here's where it really got spicy. George Conway wasn't just tossing out snarky tweets. He was delivering legal commentary with scalpel-level precision. Every time Trump stumbled into court, whether it was hush money, classified documents, or just plain bad decisions, George popped up like a legal analyst on double espresso. He broke down each move with lawyerly delight, exposing flaws so glaring even casual onlookers wondered how this man ever ran a country. While Trump shouted victimhood louder than a toddler denied a Happy Meal, George calmly explained why those tantrums wouldn't survive in Dort. He had zero tolerance for performative outrage. Every time Trump played the martyr, George called the bluff without breaking a sweat. And Melania? George made it clear if silence equals elegance, then she was practically royalty. A silent, detached, mildly confused royalty. Hypocrisy was his favorite target, especially Trump's version where law and order meant law for you, order for me. And Melania didn't escape scrutiny either. George pointed out her selective appearances, perfectly timed absences, and her vague stabs at moral leadership that felt more like a PR firm running on autopilot.
Sociopath, and one of the things about sociopath is that they don't plan, they don't think, they just emote, and they're impulsive, and they act on their whims and impulses and the last person who talked to them. And that's why you have, and then also they have the power, they love the power, the feeling of power that they get when they say, I'm turning this on, I'm turning this off, I'm turning the lights out, I'm turning the lights on, I'm raising tariffs, I'm lowering tariffs, I'm telling everybody in Tehran, 10 million people to evacuate, I'm telling them they're safe for now.
Trump fans called George bitter. Trump himself brushed him off as irrelevant. But none of it mattered, because George kept winning the one fight Trump fears most, the fight built on facts. He didn't need rallies, slogans, or cheering crowds. All he needed was Wi-Fi and legal precedent. And somehow that cut deeper than 1,000 Sleepy Joe memes. What made it even juicier was how George flipped every one of Trump's defenses into ammunition. When Trump bragged about immunity, George rattled off the legal exceptions. When Trump cried about being targeted, George reminded everyone of the difference between persecution and prosecution. And when his supporters screamed, "Deep State," George coolly pointed to court filings and said, "Nope, just due process." And the receipts? George kept them like trophies. Every lie, every contradiction, every unhinged press conference, he cataloged it all, like a historian with a petty streak, writing a burn book in real time. Except this burn book came with footnotes and timestamps. As for Melania, George never went low. He went clinical, pointing out her absence, her detachment, her uncanny ability to ghost the nation while technically still being First Lady. His message was clear without ever shouting it. Being decorative is not the same as being dignified. Suddenly, all those carefully staged photos and icy glares looked less chic and more calculated.
Terry Schreckman wants to know from you, George, do you expect Trump to target you and other staff of the Lincoln Project? And if so, do you have a defense plan?
I don't have a defense plan other than whatever he pulls up is going to be meritless. My finances are simple. It won't, I don't fear him. And I think one of the things that that people don't quite understand about Trump, but they really should, is the fact that he's a bully and he wants to pick on people who won't fight back.
Now here's the kicker. George Conway didn't need to destroy Trump. He chose to. And he did it in a way that made everyone else look like they were playing checkers while he was arguing in front of the Supreme Court with one hand tied behind his back. Trump hates losing, but what he hates even more is losing to someone on the inside, someone who knew where the skeletons were buried because he helped buy the shovel. George didn't come from MSNBC. He came straight out of conservative legal circles, which made his takedown 10 times more humiliating. And the beauty of it? George never shouted, never foamed at the mouth. He just delivered calm, scathing commentary that landed harder than a mic drop in a monastery. It was brutal, relentless, and elegantly petty, like watching a legal thriller where the villain gets dismantled with bullet points. Trump lashed out, of course, he always does. But George had already won. For every angry rant, George had logic. For every insult, he had receipts. And for every awkward Melania photo, he had questions no one in Trump world wanted to answer. Why does it sting more when George Conway takes the mic? Because unlike MSNBC pundits or blue-check Twitter warriors, George wasn't shouting from outside the gates. He used to live in the castle. He's not some radical lefty frothing about Russian conspiracies. He's the buttoned-up conservative legal mind who once fit the GOP mold so perfectly, you could have sent him to Federalist Society fantasy camp and no one would have blinked. So when he calls Trump unfit, unstable, and legally radioactive, it isn't betrayal. It's a leak from the inside. And Trump hates leaks more than he hates kale.
That tweet was the decision of the United States Court of International Trade striking down the tariffs.
Yeah.
An unimpeachable, unobjectionable decision. I read it. It looks like well-reasoned to me. But there was one Trump judge on there. There was one Reagan judge. Like she must be really old, Jane Rustani. I mean, I think she was on that court when I was clerking across the street for the Second Circuit in 1987. And then there was, I think, an Obama judge. He was mad that there was a Trump judge on that panel. And that's what provoked that. But in reality, I believe that he's had it out for the Federalist Society ever since the coup, ever since January 6th, ever since the post.
Let's not forget, this man is married to Kellyanne Conway. Yes, the same Kellyanne who gifted us alternative facts and once tried to Jedi mind trick the nation into believing Trump didn't say what we all just heard on tape. So when George throws shade, it hits different. It's like your childhood pastor tweeting, "By the way, I always knew my cousin was trash." You can't look away. George doesn't just bring legal insight, he brings the awkward insider knowledge that makes Thanksgiving dinner feel like a hostage negotiation. And the kicker? He speaks Trump's native language: power, ego, and legal disaster. While other critics aim for dignity and facts, George grabs a legal sledgehammer and swings it like Thor with a law degree. He doesn't plead for justice, he drafts it, footnotes and all. Naturally, Trump can't handle it, so what do we get? Classic all-caps rage tweets. George stays stone cold, beautiful, predictable, poetic. The sound of a man dunking on Trump with a JD and zero chill. And Melania? Still MIA. Not a word, not a post. She's treating the chaos like it's not her circus, not her monkeys. But her silence only makes it juicier. Does she secretly agree with George? Or is she just waiting out the madness until the next Tiffany's box shows up? Nobody knows, but the silence is deafening.
As we mentioned, the former president's lawyers, they're going to argue tomorrow that his actions after the 2020 election were all covered by presidential immunity. How do you think this is going to play out?
I don't think it's going to play out very well for the former president tomorrow. I think one of the basic guidelines I always had in watching arguments of any sort in court, and particularly appellate arguments, is the side that gets the most questions is probably the one going to get the short end of the stick in the ruling at the end. And I anticipate that most of the questions are going to be directed at Trump and his lawyers on how you can possibly justify giving a president who is sworn to uphold the laws of the United States and the Constitution of the United States, how that person can be.
And George? He's not done. He's cranking out essays, showing up on panels, and dropping sarcastic one-liners that sound like they were written by a judge with a grudge. Every time Trump gets indicted, George is right there with popcorn, a PDF, and a smirk. And here's the kicker. He's living proof that Trumpism can't hide behind partisanship forever. Because when the very people who helped build the machine start yanking out the wires, you know the gears are breaking down. You don't need a Bernie sticker to take down Trump. You just need receipts, rage, and one very awkward marriage. By the time George was through, Trump didn't look like a titan anymore. He looked like a loud HOA president with delusions of grandeur. Melania looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. And Kellyanne? She probably wished her husband had picked up pottery instead of political demolition. In the end, George Conway didn't just critique Trump. He exposed him with surgical precision, relentless sarcasm, and the devastating weight of being right. And somehow, he made constitutional law feel like stand-up comedy. So if you're wondering who really got the last laugh, it wasn't Trump. It wasn't Melania. It was the quiet guy with the facts, the receipts, and a very public vendetta.